Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome back to Geeks Reads. I'm finding it harder and harder to do these, not because I lack books, but because I can't remember which ones I've already done before. I just recorded had one, I had it all set up, did my research, yada yada, went onto my YouTube page and out of curiosity looked to make sure I hadn't done it before, and I'd already done the book, so had to scramble to do this one. I thought I'd done this one before, but apparently I had not, so good to go. I'm going to talk about the Time Master Trilogy by Louise Cooper, an image of which you will see here, here, and here. I'm going to talk about it as a trilogy because I kind of think it needs to. Anywho, the first book starts off with like a prophecy that the forces of order and chaos have been at war for millennia. You know, sometimes one is an ascendant, sometimes the other, but they're always balanced out and fight each other. But then, following that, we find out that the forces of order have prevailed, and the gods of chaos have been banished completely. But it's been prophesied that they will return. It's then we meet a young boy named Tarod, who does something terrible by accident. He winds up being mystically transported to the far side of the world, and he joins the academy to learn magic. Something he turns out to be very skilled at. And there's all kinds of political machinations going on, you know. I'm not sure what to talk about without spoiling stuff, and you know how much I hate spoiling the stories. But yes, Tarot is involved in the prophecy of between chaos and order. That's kind of goes without saying. But, obviously, initiate, outcast, and master. This is his introduction where he, learns a bit about himself, learns a bit about magic. And we're basically introduced to the main cast of characters, his friends, his love interests, his enemies. Outcast is the reason I think this even does the trilogy. You do all three books at once. This book is kind of filler. Not much goes on. I mean, you get some interesting revelations in this, and you learn a lot of stuff, but not much really happens. It's just kind of a bridge between initiate and master. Master is the culmination of the story, the climax, when we kind of learn a bit more about what actually happened between the forces of order and chaos. And we resolve all the major characters' plot lines. I did find this trilogy had an interesting take on things. There's a lot of talk about the forces of order and chaos, primarily in all three books. And as you learn more about the conflict between them, about what has gone on, what continues to go on, and who supports the forces of order and who supports the force of chaos. Given that order completely banished the gods of chaos, there's not many people left who would have anything to do with the gods of chaos. It's heresy. So, they stamped that out pretty quickly. But, when we get to the climax, the final book, where, the prophecy is sort of fulfilled, things don't quite take the turn that you expect. And I think that's what really draws me back to this trilogy. This is one of those series that I loved when it first came out. I really, really did. And I did go back and reread it recently. Not before this recording, but man, I'm hoping I didn't do this one already, because I could have sworn I did. Couldn't find it on my YouTube page. So I'm hoping I didn't do this one already. And if I did, forgive me. But it's not as good as I remember it, but it's also still fairly decent. My one big criticism is really that the middle book is just filler, You know, things happen that are important to the story, but it doesn't need to be a full book. You know, you really could have folded it into, I think maybe, I don't think it would have folded into this book, because in the order of which things happen. You could have folded a little bit of it into book one, and then not much, and then carried the rest on into book three. You know, it would have, you know, increased this book by, you know, 30, 40 pages, and then add another 100 pages to the second book, which, I don't know. That's my opinion. It is a good series, but it's fairly quick. It's fairly easy to read. Aside from a few really interesting twists, it's kind of basic and doesn't really add much new to the genre. But it's fun and interesting. There are follow-up books in the series. I never knew that Louise Cooper had written other books. There are more books set in that world. I think they take place like a couple hundred years in the future. So there's none of the main cast from the first trilogy is around. But I may have to go ahead and get those to see if they're any good. That's my review. That's my take on it. I hope I didn't do this one already. As always, thanks for watching. As always, my stuff is crap. And until next time, good hunting.